Now, we all know Terry Clayman or thought we knew everything about her, but let me just tell you, Terry graduated from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. She told me I could tell the year, in 1977, with a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy, and in 1998 with a Doctor of Pharmacy. She spent 43 years as a hospital pharmacist working at Bon Secours Hospital, Sinai Hospital, Northwest Medical Center, and Mercy Medical Center, where she did retire 3.5 years ago. She was the clinical specialist in the anticoagulation clinic at Mercy for the last 5 years prior to retiring. Terry was an active member of the Maryland Society of Health System Pharmacists, serving as newsletter editor. She was secretary for a period of time and chair of their annual seminar. In 2005, Terry was honored as the Society's Pharmacist of the Year. So now you know everything that you ever want to know about Terry Clayman. But we're very proud of her. And I think before the presentation, both the rabbi and Terry deserve a round of applause. Going to turn it over now. Thank you very much.
All right. So, believe it or not, my friends, Jewish herbs and foods for healing is more than what you put in a pot of chicken soup. It makes sense given our understandings that Jewish tradition embraces science and places value on life and healing, that Jews should have embraced the healing property of herbs over the century, the natural medicines of the world. In the Talmud, in Pesachim, it mentions that a book of remedies was hidden by King Hezekiah. It's said to be a book filled with natural tonics, the healing property of plants, and other natural elements. Now, the commentators argue over the origins of this book. Radak and Ramban suggest that it was written by the wise King Solomon. Other German commentators suggest that this herbal wisdom dates back to the sons of Noah. And one commentator even attributes these books of remedies to Moses himself. So the question is why did King Hezekiah hide the book of remedies? It's said that he wanted people to heal through their faith in God rather than through their faith in medicine. The great doctor of the medieval era, Moses Maimonides, ridicules this idea. He suggests that the book of remedies was hidden because the book didn't just contain remedies which could be useful, because he himself, of course, used remedies, but it also contained magical incantations for healing that were a desecration of God's names and powers. And thus, King Hezekiah decided that this book best be hidden. Now, the evidence through the years tells us that herbs and natural remedies were widely used in Judaism. Jewish medical history contains doctors, and by and large, they were trained in medical academies outside of the Pale of Settlement, such as in places like Padua, Italy, or in France. They often had additional professions like being a rabbi or a scholar or a poet or philosopher. The before mentioned Maimonides, he was all of those. And by and large, these physicians served the upper classes. They oversaw but didn't perform the surgeries, and most served as private doctors to the elite or university professors. Natural remedies were, in fact, part of their medical practice. The Baalei Shem, and you may know that from the Baal Shem Tov of Hasidism, Baalei Shem were the masters of good names. They could perform amazing miracles by using and manipulating God's name. The Baalei Shem of Eastern Europe were known to rely heavily on medical literature, which used herbs. they used and compiled Yiddish remedy books, touting them as Kabbalah. And these books borrowed liberally from Slavic superstitions, popular medicines, and healing practices. It wasn't uncommon for them to recommend a charm along with their herbal remedy. And in the Ashkenazi world, the third type of healer that you might have heard your parents talk about were felchers, which today we might translate as paramedics. So let me tell you about felchers. So they were on the battlefield, they were barber surgeons, and the earliest felcher, as I explained, we know dates back to the 13th century. Now, felchers not only did surgery, but they were expected to be knowledgeable about herbal treatments. Felchers were considered the folk physicians by the Jewish communities they practiced in. And Ashkenazi Jews, your parents or your grandparents, would call them rofeh or roifeh, meaning doctor. Now, from the Middle Ages onwards, pharmacies, like where Terry worked, were where the healers and the medics attained their secret ingredients, recipes, and prescriptions. The pharmacy served as a meeting place for healers to share their scientific and folk knowledge. Baalei Shem, doctors, healers, felshers would all gather in the pharmacy. And pharmacies were also a place for other cultures, the secular cultures or religious cultures that were outside of the Jewish world, to exchange remedies in that place too. Now, in Sephardic medical practice, by and large, family medicine was practiced by women who were pivotal to the health of their communities. In the research by Isaac Jack Levy and Rosemary Levery Zumwalt, many women interviewed on their Sephardic medical practices expressed a lot of skepticism about scientific medical practices and doctors. For Sephardim, all illness was connected to a spiritual cause, and thus the women combined herbs and they combined incantations and they made rituals for healing. And these practices included blessings, curses, cures that involved herbs, oils, sugar, and mumia, which is dried bone of corpses that I'll be talking more about later. Terry.
Okay. Herbal supplements are natural, so they must be safe, right? Nope, that is not true all the time. Many popular natural remedies can clash with prescription and non-prescription drugs, sometimes with severe consequences. Certain herbal supplements can change absorption, metabolism, or excretion of a medication. If this happens, it can affect the potency of your medications, which means you may get either too much or too little of the medication you need. Dangerous interactions are on the rise, mostly because doctors are in the dark about their patients' use of supplements. About 50% of adults in the United States say they have used one or more supplements in the past 30 days. Almost 70% of older adults use them, but only about 25% of people who take herbal supplements tell their healthcare providers. And as many as 25% of people also take prescription medicines that are ordered for them by their healthcare providers. This is why you need to talk to your healthcare provider before you take herbal supplements. If you take prescription medicines. If you're prescribed a new medication, make sure your healthcare provider or pharmacist know you're taking an herbal supplement.
So tonight, we are going to be talking about 3 different herbs. And I'm going to tell you the Jewish history of those herbs, and Terry is going to talk about them from a medical standpoint. And we are going to start with St. John's wort. My information on the use of St. John's wort, because believe it or not, this is not my area of expertise, so I had to do lots of reading, is taken from this book, Ashkenazi Herbalism. Now, St. John's wort was used widely in the ancient world. Its Latin name, Hypericum, originates from the Greek and means over an apparition. There was an ancient belief that St. John's wort was objectionable to evil spirits. Apparently, even a small whiff of the plant could cause evil spirits to flee. And the Yiddish name for this herb is Shedim Schutz, which indicates this. Shedim are evil spirits and Schutz are to run away, right? So we called it evil spirit run away in Yiddish. St. John's wort was used in Ashkenazi herbalism to treat external wounds. And where did they learn this? Beginning with Greek medicine. The first indication of this use is found in the works of Hippocrates and Theophrastus. And if anybody is a Greek scholar here, come later and correct me on how I pronounce these. Dioscorides found a practical use for St. John's wort as a healer for hip ailments and knew of its ability to draw out bilious matter and excrement and its ability to heal burns when plastered on the skin. Galen noted that it was an astringent. It also stimulated urination. And the Jewish physician Tobias HaKohen also commented on the herb's use for the urinary system, for digestion, and cited it as a possible remedy for kidney stones. In the Islamic Sephardic world, Maimonides called this plant by different names. In Arabic and Spanish, both of which I've put up there, but I can read the Spanish, the Arabic's a little bit beyond me. Herbal de San Juan. It is derived from the idea of being forgetful or appeasing grief or calming. It was known as the heart herb. And during the Middle Ages and onwards, Polish Jews believed that this plant cured 99 illnesses. So it was a wonder drug, as well as having power over evil forces. They thought if you hung St. John's wort in your window, the house would be protected against lightning. Good to know, right? They also used the herb as a diuretic and for wound healing. And when the fresh flowers are combined with spiritus, it was believed to have healing properties for lacerations, burns, and ulcers. In the Pale Settlement, as late as the 20th century, so in the memory of your parents and grandparents, St. John's wort was used widely for a variety of ailments. Here is a sample from some studies that were done and interviews that were made. It was widely employed for intestinal ailments and kidney troubles. In Leitchev, Ashkenazi healers used it for skin disorders. We have records of folk healers using the plant for dysentery, respiratory illnesses, tuberculosis, blood, and metabolic diseases. For headaches caused by anemia and dizziness, a deconcoction of the herb is made and you wash your hair with it. It was used in Berdichev and Cherkos by women suffering from gynecological diseases. In Boshlov, in the Pale Settlement, the same infusion was given to bring on menstruation, and it was also used to stop hemorrhaging in both men and women. And if someone was bitten by a mad dog, as we all are, if you lived in Basilia, it was used to cure the infection. And perhaps the most interesting use was using St. John's wort for nervous conditions, because, as Terry will tell us, this replicates the use that we have in modern times for this herb.
St. John's wort has been shown to be beneficial in the treatment of mild to moderate depression. It is unclear if it's beneficial in the treatment of severe depression. Some evidence exists that shows that taking St. John's wort alone or with black cohosh may reduce menopausal symptoms such as hot flashes. However, there are many potentially serious interactions between St. John's wort and prescription drugs. Taking St. John's wort with antidepressants such as Prozac or Zoloft can increase levels of serotonin and cause headaches, sweating, dizziness, and agitation. The same reaction can occur with some meds that are used to treat migraine headaches, like Imitrex. Taking St. John's wort with Xanax, some therapeutic agents, simvastatin, some immunosuppressive agents like cyclosporine, digoxin, some HIV medications, and Prilosec can reduce the drug's effectiveness. Loss of seizure control may occur if St. John's wort is taken with Dilantin, and breakthrough bleeding, irregular bleeding, or unplanned pregnancy may occur if taken with contraceptives. St. John's wort also has the potential to interact with blood-thinning medications such as warfarin.
Ha. Now you know more about St. John's wort than you ever thought. Garlic. So in the Babylonian Talmud, my friends, in Nedarim, it said that eating garlic was a Jewish custom. And Jews were referred to themselves as garlic eaters. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius is said to have criticized Jews for smelling of garlic. And in the Jerusalem Talmud, we are taught that garlic is an aphrodisiac. In the Jerusalem Talmud, Megillah 4:175a, it says that the scribe Ezra ate garlic on Friday evenings because it promotes love and arouses desire. In Sephardic ritual, avoidance of garlic was a common remedy used by women. My information about garlic is largely taken from this book, Ritual Medical Law of Sephardic Women. Now, as I explained earlier, often the use of herbal remedies was accompanied by rituals and incantations by Sephardic women, as well as blessings and curses. But the Sephardic women were the local healers. They were the people that did the healing in their home. Now, medicinal plants in Sephardic homes are known as segula and might include items that were widely available, such as marjoram, garlic, rosemary, rue, salt, coffee, sugar, urine. And to aid someone who was ill, the woman had to determine the cause of the problem. This was done by sight, or by analyzing that person's dreams, or by divination using molten lead. And one use of garlic that was very popular was its avoidance. Here are some samples of avoiding garlic and the accompanying ceremonies for healing. In Rhodes and Izmir, if someone has taken fright or was anxious or depressed, they would be secretly given what is known as mumia tapada, that is, secret mummy. It's dried bones that were ground up and hidden in the food. And apparently the best mumia was not from a corpse, but from the foreskin of a circumcision. And other people took their mumia from bones or animals, but it was a very prized ingredient in healing. Now, mumia is regarded as powerful medicine and was highly valued. It should be given apparently early in the morning on a day when Torah is read or on the eve of Rosh Chodesh. And one does not tell the sick person who's depressed that they are receiving a pinch of mumia. And once the mumia is administered, the ill person has to follow this special diet: no onion, no fish, and no garlic. After 3 days, one can tell the sick person that they had consumed mumia, but they must continue on that special diet for a full 9 days. Now, why are they told at the end of 3 days? Because by end of 3 days, they should be able to feed themselves. Another example of garlic being avoided. Garlic was also not used, after a patient had been diagnosed with what is known as livianos, divination using molten lead. So if you're sick and they can't figure out why you're sick, they use this molten lead and see what pattern it has, and they figure out what is wrong with you. And the livianos had to be completed in 1 day, and once again, the patient had to undergo a special diet. For 9 days, they can't eat onion, garlic, fish, fried food, food with strong odors, and salted fish. So what did they eat? If you're curious, they lived on a diet of sweets, halva, and pasta. Sounds good to me. I actually want to get sick, sweets, halva, and pasta, right. But anyway, Lucy Garnett, in her book, The Women of Turkey and Their Folklore, then describes the accompanying ritual. Another method of exorcising demons is called indulgencia, or coaxing, and is employed in the case of violent shock or any mental excitement, as it is believed to be caused by some demon having gathered mastery over the sufferer. The patient is washed, dressed in white linen, then laid on a white bed, and the sufferer must remain as much alone as possible, eating nothing but bread, butter, and milk, and taking as medicine occasional small doses of pulverized mamia, and that is dissolved in sugar water. Sfardim called this ritual indalko, and others called it saradura, depending on where they lived. Another use for garlic was as a prophylactic protection. It's said that garlic shields one from the evil eye. A woman from Salonika in her 80s is quoted as saying, "Garlic is for the evil eye and ruda is for the evil eye. They should put a piece of it in the clothing and hang it in the house. For fright, doctors don't know anything about fright. He's going to give you all the medicines in the world. Nothing to it, it won't work." It was tucked, the garlic, as a protective into boys' baby clothes before a circumcision, so that they wouldn't get ill after the circumcision. And it was not unusual for garlic to be used as a protection with other items. A Clara Donnan, who was from Zenica, Bosnia, explained, "Rue is placed thus, pointing to the ear, and garlic was placed under the pillow so it wouldn't be seen." And Julie Aljev of Rusak, Bulgaria, recalls, "Garlic they put under the pillow for the evil eye. Sometimes they would tie blue chains by stringing garlic together with blue beads, and garlic they would put in pockets in the house and under the doors. With garlic in a pocket, a male child was supposed to grow to be a strong man, and amulets were crocheted in red and blue and hung on the doors of houses containing garlic to protect them. In Greece, they believed if the evil eye had fallen on a home, they would place a horseshoe, a head of garlic, and some beads in the house for protection.
Garlic has been used to lower high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Taken in large doses, garlic also thins the blood. Because of this, people taking warfarin, regular doses of aspirin, or other blood thinners should not use garlic for anything other than seasoning. Garlic can cause potentially harmful side effects when combined with the anti-HIV drug Seguinavir, and patients should be cautious about using garlic supplements during HIV therapy. Garlic may also cause hypoglycemia and should be used cautiously with diabetes medications.
We're going to have lots of questions about garlic, right? Ooh. There we go. Ooh, everyone's getting excited. Cannabis. Let me tell you about cannabis from a Jewish perspective. For a long time, archaeologists and paleobotanists believed that cannabis was unknown to the ancient Israelites. Some writers had hypothesized its usage in a religious ritual in the Bible. Sula Bennett in 1936 claimed that the plant Kene Busam, mentioned 5 times in the Bible, was used in anointing oil and was in fact cannabis. But academics by and large dismissed this as erroneous. However, in 2020, so not so long ago, archaeologists and paleobotanists identified cannabis residue on the sanctuary altar at Tel Arad, suggesting that cannabis might indeed have been part of the ritual at the time. Now, in Jewish law, there has been some debate around the use of cannabis. In 1973, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, stated that cannabis was not permitted under Jewish law, citing the herb's harmful effects. However, Rabbi Ephraim Zalmanovich believed that medical, not recreational marijuana was permitted. The majority of Orthodox Posekim teach that the Torah obligates us to lead our lives as healthily as possible. In an article by Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, published in thejewishpress.com, he gives an explanation that reaches back into our rabbinic sources. He writes, the Talmud in Pesachim 113a tells us that Rav, who lived in the 2nd century, told his son Hia, do not ingest any drugs. And Rashi explains that Rav was concerned that a person would enjoy the high and would crave experiencing it over and over. And why was that a problem? How is being high and happy a violation of living healthy? He continues by arguing that if a substance clouds our judgment or compromises our consciousness, we are weakening the God part of our soul, surrendering our humanity to substance. He quotes Maimonides, whoever becomes drunk is a sinner, it's shameful, and will lose his wisdom. If he becomes drunk before others, he desecrates God's name. So Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, in his article, sums up the Orthodox position in this way. While the world around us is adopting more permissive laws and views of marijuana use, Jewish law believes that although medical marijuana is permissible, its recreational use prevents us from being our best selves and is forbidden. We should satisfy the craving to get high by working hard to develop our spiritual muscles and deepen our connection to the infinite source of creation. So now you must be wondering, I've given you the Orthodox point of view. What does Reform Judaism say? It actually agrees with the Orthodox position. At the 67th General Assembly in November of 2003 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the following resolution was adopted by the Union for Reform Judaism, the roof body of this synagogue. The Union for Reform Judaism resolves to 1. Urge elected officials in the United States to support federal legislation and regulation to allow the medicinal use of marijuana for patients with intractable pain and other conditions under medical supervision. 2. Urge the Food and Drug Administration to expand the scope of allowable investigational new drug applications in order to move research forward more quickly towards an approved product. 3. Call for further medical research on marijuana and its constituent compounds with the goal of developing reliable and safe cannabinoid drugs for management of debilitating conditions. And 4. Call upon congregations to advocate for the necessary changes in local, state, and federal law to permit the medical use of marijuana and ensure its accessibility for that purpose. Now, just in case you're interested, cannabis, if smoked, is considered kosher because it is not consumed. Some legal opinions only apply this to medical cannabis. Edibles, however, may not be kosher on the chance that they contain small insects. So the halakhic recommendation is to only use cannabis that is certified as kosher.
This is going to be a hard act to follow. Cannabis has been used since 2900 BC for pain management. Researchers believe that the components such as CBD, cannabidiol, are responsible for its pain-relieving effects. It may be effective for conditions like fibromyalgia. CBD oil may help reduce symptoms of depression, anxiety, and even psychosis. Some evidence suggests cannabinoids may have neuroprotective properties, potentially benefiting conditions like MS. Cannabis oil can stimulate appetite, making it useful for patients who have lost their appetite due to medical conditions or treatments. THC containing cannabis has been researched for chemotherapy-related symptoms. And in the hospital, we would give out dronabinol, which was a THC, a cannabis thing for patients that were undergoing chemotherapy who had lost their appetite. There are 394 medications that are known to interact with cannabis. Of these, 28 are major interactions. Most of these reactions are with central nervous system depressants, such as codeine, fentanyl, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, morphine, oxycodone, meperidine, and tramadol, which can cause addictive effects leading to respiratory depression, coma, and even death. Cannabis may also increase the risk of bleeding if taken with warfarin.
We have a microphone here. If you have any questions for Terry or for myself.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Hello.
No,
Push the button.
see you.
Great to be here. This was also interesting. Terry, my question has to do with not really something you covered, but I think that you would probably have the answer to this. So besides being concerned about interactions between any herbal supplements and drugs that you're taking, medications that you're taking, as far as food goes, like for example, I don't eat grapefruit anymore because I take a statin.
Right.
Is that, generally speaking, will there be information when when you're taking a medication? Will there be information in the little, that paper that you get that
On
has
that
all
paper
kinds of
you
things?
get, it
Tells
should all
you
be on there.
about any kind of food that
Yeah.
should be avoided,
Right.
or might even be good to take with it, or
Right.
something like that. So that's all. Okay.
Yeah, statin should always have the thing, avoid grapefruit with that. The other things, like when I was working in the last couple of years when I was in the anticoagulation clinic, I basically dealt with warfarin, and there's a lot of interactions, there's many interactions with food. And that was like, we would just tell the patients, I had the patient in front of me, I was adjusting their dose of warfarin, and I would tell them, you have to avoid these foods, or if you are going to take them, you have to be consistent with them, small amounts, because they contain vitamin K and it would counteract the effects of the warfarin.
Right. So we should
And then there was all
always.
this stuff with alcohol and things like
Right.
that. So many different things can interfere with the medications.
I find it really interesting that amongst Sephardic women, although I don't think there's much science behind their medicines and their ritual, part of it was avoiding foods, right? Part of it was taking stuff away versus making people eat stuff. So when they did certain treatments, they would say, now avoid this.
Right.
And we do the same thing today,
Yeah.
which is a parallel
Right.
thing.
So you didn't mention leeches, and I have some recordings of my great uncle who came to the United States in 1920, and he mentioned that between 1900 and 1920 they used leeches on his father, and so I thought that
I've
was
actually worked in a hospital where we had to order leeches for a patient that they had, I guess, a severe infection, and they actually, and the funny thing was, at the time, the director of the pharmacy's name was Louise Leach, and she was calling to order leeches. It was kind of funny, but they did get the leeches in, and they put them on the person.
Did the patient insist on it? Is that why they got it?
I don't know if the patient is, I don't remember.
Did they think they were going to help them, the leeches?
Well, they did. They did
What
help
did they
them.
do?
They eat up the dead stuff in the, they help cure the infection.
Here is a reminiscence of somebody from their childhood in Apt, which is present-day Poland, experiencing just before World War II the use of leeches. Avramala Strutza, another barber who was also a feldsher, right? The feldsher were the common doctors. They didn't go to medical school, but they were the ones that did the doctoring. A kind of paramedic. He had a library of medical books. People would go to the feldsher for minor ailments, colds, upset stomach, cuts, bruises, aches, and pains. A feldsher could also treat ailments with bleeding and leeches or payafgis. I never saw leeches being used or bleeding, but I vaguely remember overhearing Luza Klezmer talk about a cousin of his in Osrev, a feldsher, who did bleeding. He apparently had a brass basin and a scalpel for that purpose. What a feldsher could not treat himself, he would refer to a medical doctor. There was also Judas, who had been an assistant nurse in the Cyrus army. She may have also been a feldsher. That qualified her as some sort of doctor. So they definitely did use leeches. It wasn't, we were talking about herbs, but yes.
Yeah.
What do they do?
They like, yeah.
So it's not just, it's not just nothing.
No, it's not nothing.
okay.
It's a real remedy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Maybe a last resort. Oh, here comes the doctor.
Hi,
He'll let us know.
You're in trouble.
I know I'm in trouble.
So leeches, leeches are used for a process called debridement. And debridement is done in a macro way when a surgeon finds a wound that's infected and he or she is going to take away tissue that is diseased. But if you're using leeches, they are such micro phenomena that they can get into the wound, and they only eat dead tissue. They don't eat live tissue, and that's why they're used for debridement.
Any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, I'm sure we'll have lots of conversation at the Oneg. Please, you are invited to come next door for Kiddush, Motzi over Matzah, and a Pesach Dik Oneg. Wishing you all Shabbat Shalom. A big thanks to Terry.